When you talk about the skeletal system, the muscular system, the integumentary system, how all three of those relate back to the nutrition we talk about. And then wrap it all up at the end with a little conversation on body mass index and body fat content. The skeletal system. What's interesting about the skeletal system is it's stronger than concrete. Yeah, your bones are stronger than concrete. It's all based on how they're structurally built. Now, the bones are built based on collagen, a protein, hence we need nutrition, and calcium, again, nutrition. That collagen gives the bones a little bit of a flexibility and a structure to them, to all the crystalline structure of the calcium being embedded into it. So your bones are very strong, but believe it or not, they can bend just a little bit. But one of their biggest strengths is the fact that they're constantly rebuilding. They're remodeling. Now, all of this remodeling, all this rebuilding is constantly happening throughout your life. We're talking from birth until death. And your bones remodel based on the stresses applied to them. So if you start exercising or you start doing something different than you were before that applies more stress, the bones will start to slowly become stronger in response to that stress. But to do that, they need more collagen and more calcium, which means you have to have enough of that in your diet to allow the bones to get extra beyond what you normally need to maintain them. So it comes down to knowing what's in your diet and making sure you have everything balanced out. Because just getting the calcium in your diet isn't enough. You can't very easily absorb calcium unless you have vitamin D in your digestive system. So again, we gotta make sure you have enough vitamin D. And where does that come from? So we're putting all these pieces together to make the bones strong enough. But beyond the calcium, beyond the collagen, the proteins, you also need phosphorus, you need magnesium, you need fluoride, you need vitamin D, as I mentioned, as well as vitamin K. All those components are necessary to make sure your bones are healthy to maintain the strength, or, if necessary, increase their strength as you apply new stresses. But overall, what else do the bones do? Well, the bones give you structural support. They help a little bit with protection. Your liver is nestled a little bit and protected a little bit by the ribs. They help with red blood cell production. You're also looking at a storage of calcium. So all these things, though, tie back to nutrition. Red blood cell production. We went through what that needs already. But the basic there is you need iron, you need hemoglobin, which is a protein. You need various components to build the red blood cells. Calcium storage, obviously you need calcium. So all of this goes back again to that healthy diet. And you need to maintain this bone density. Well, your bone density is dependent not only on your diet, but also on hormones in your body. And as you go through life, those hormones can change and alter, which can then also impact your bone density if you don't maintain a healthy diet. So a lot of components of the skeletal system going back to that healthy diet and nutrition again. All right, let's jump into the muscular system. The muscular system. Well, you have voluntary and you have involuntary muscles. Now, those involuntary muscles are found throughout your GI tract. Well, your digestive system, GI tract, is what brings in those nutrients we're talking about. And that smooth muscle, being involuntary, is what helps propel things through your system. Either peristalsis, to start with, down your esophagus, or segmentation down in your intestines, small and large. All controlled by muscle. And you have to have enough energy, ATP, to power those muscles. And again, you get ATP, remember, from oxygen and glucose, or the carbohydrates. So again, we're going back to how everything is tied back to that nutrition. Nutrition is so important. It's every system. Now your muscles, they can store glucose. And routinely, they always have some storage. But unlike the liver, who also stores glucose, the muscles will use up all of their stored units. They won't save them. They won't send them out to the blood. Everything the muscles store, the muscles use. It doesn't matter if it's the heart, if it's skeletal muscle, or if it's smooth muscle. They need energy. They need energy to function. And that comes from glucose and oxygen as part of the process. That leaves us with one last system, the integumentary system. Skin, hair, and nails. Well, your skin is helping your immune system. We already mentioned that one. Skin needs zinc, skin needs proteins, skin needs collagen. But so does your hair and nails. They also need proteins to grow properly. So all of this ties back to nutrition. Your skin, though, can also help with vitamin D production a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Now, vitamin D in your skin can be done from sunlight exposure. Now, this is not an excuse to go and tan for 2 or 3 hours. You can get the amount of sunlight exposure in the summer in 8-10 minutes. The idea is there's more skin exposed, so therefore it's faster to process. But in the winter months up north, where it's cold and we're all bundled up, you might only have your face exposed. So there it can take a half hour, sometimes even an hour, to get the vitamin D maximum absorption. Now, obviously, you're not only getting vitamin D from the sun. You're ingesting it. So the skin, sun exposure, that's only a very small amount of vitamin D for the body. But again, ties back to nutrition a little bit. Every single body system, all 11, are tied back to nutrition. Healthy, balanced diet helps all of them. So you should be able to look at every one of those body systems now and say, okay, skeletal is tied back because of this and that. The muscular system relates to nutrition because of this. The integumentary system relates because of that. The digestive system, well, that one has a lot of relation. The nervous system, the cardiovascular system, just can go on and on. Every one of the 11 ties back to a healthy diet, to a balanced nutritional diet. All right, the last part of this video is dealing with BMI, or body mass index, and body fat content. Now, a lot of times you might have heard the terms overweight and obese. Are they the same? Well, they kind of get interchangeable, but in reality, they're not exactly the same. Overweight just means an individual is carrying more weight on their frame for their height than typical or than average. Well, that could be a bodybuilder. Large amounts of muscle have a large amount of weight. So anyone that's very physical has a large amount of muscle or a very large, dense bone system, a lot of times might fall into overweight. So any high amounts of muscle, high density bones, or even a lot of water retention can cause someone to become overweight for a period of time. Now, all those, water, muscle, and bone density, all require maintenance. To keep up the muscle and the bone density, you have to keep working out or exercising. The water, you got to keep ingesting or drinking water. So overweight isn't necessarily bad. Depends on your body frame, depends on what you're carrying the weight. Now, the term obese, that is specifically referring to fat content on the body. So overweight and obese, they might be interchangeable in some places, but for nutritional purposes for this course, they do mean different things. Someone might be overweight and be in perfect peak physical shape. If you look at a lot of professional athletes, they can be falling into that overweight category just due to their sheer muscle mass they carry. Doesn't mean it's unhealthy, just means you have to look at what the conditions are for what overweight means. Now, the ideal weight, based on gender, based on height, based on age, there is a scientific background behind what is the ideal weight range. I mean, it's not one number, it's a range. But even with that being said, there's so many variables. Someone might be perfectly healthy, have a great looking physique, and they're still right on that borderline of healthy to overweight. Doesn't mean anything's wrong, just means they're healthy. Means they have a large amount of muscle, their bones are a little more dense maybe, so they're on the upper end of the scale. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's looking at everything together. That same individual could have been at that point without being healthy by having no exercise and having that be fat instead of muscle. So it all comes down to what the weight is and what the background of the individual is. You can't simply say it's bad because of the weight, period. Doesn't work. But now, even with that being said, there's a scientific background of what the ideal weight range is. Then you take on to cultural ideals. Depending on cultures and what the cultural norm is, that ideal weight might shift away from what is the scientific basis. Some cultures value a little bit higher weights. Some cultures value a little bit lower weights. So you have to take into account what the culture is, as well as the person's background and physical ability, age, gender, height. There's a lot of things here that go into this. And when they're looking at these, there's different ways to account. One is BMI, or body mass index. There's a whole chart that talks about this. Now, this chart, though, doesn't take any of those into account. It only looks at height and weight and gender. It doesn't look, are you very athletic? Are you a couch potato? It just looks at the three factors with no background, which means someone that might be a great peak performance athlete, according to BMI, is considered overweight. They might be even on the obese side of the chart because of the sheer amount of muscle mass they carry. So again, BMI is a guide, not ideal by any means. So taking that into account, but then also taking into account the background, the person's history. What else could apply or impact that rating? There are two other ways of measuring body mass index besides that chart that could be a little more accurate. One is water weighing. What this does is you take the weight of a person on land, so without being in the water. Then you put them in a tank, completely submerged. Yes, you've got an air tube. But when they're submerged, muscle and bone weigh more, fat weighs less because of its buoyancy. So taking into account the water displacement and the person's weight in the water can give that a more accurate reading of how much fat composition versus muscle is on that person. Now, you don't usually see that done. I mean, I'm willing to bet probably nobody's had that happen unless you're in a special scientific research or a very high-end athletic program, because it's not the easiest, and it's also very time-consuming. Another one that's a little bit simpler is going to be bioelectric impedance analysis. What that is you'll be holding two electrodes, basically, and seeing how long the signal travels through your body. Now, it's not harmful, it doesn't hurt. Your body naturally has electrical currents flowing through the nervous system all the time. The way this works, though, is fat will slow down the current flowing. Muscle conducts it very efficiently. So it looks at how much muscle versus fat that is based on the impedance of how long it takes to get through the two handholds. Again, probably never had that one happen. It's more of a specialty when research is being done or high-level athletic abilities. But if you had either one of those, water weighing or bioelectric impedance, that's a pretty accurate reading, and that should give you a really good idea of where you're sitting. Until the next video.